What's going on, guys? Bob Roche from RocheTechnology.com here with my full review for you of the Microsoft Surface with RT. Getting right into the review, the first thing I'm going to talk about is the hardware. Looking at the right side of the device, we have the charging port, a USB 2.0 port, a micro HDMI, and a speaker. Moving up top, we have a power and a sleep button, we have a speaker and also a microphone. Rotating another 90 degrees, we have another speaker, a headphone jack, volume up and down rocker, and also a groove for the kickstand. There's not too much to see on the bottom, but here's where you'll find the connector for the keyboard cover. Microsoft has also hidden a micro SD XC card slot under the kickstand. The front sports a 10.6-inch 1366 by 768 display, and both the front and the back pack that 720p camera. So just to give you guys a look at how these cameras compare side by side with each other, all three of them are up on the screen right now, but now let's go ahead and blow each one of these up full screen and we'll see how they compare. So the first one I'm going to look at right here is the Surface RT. This is shooting at 720p using the front facing camera. This guy right here, this is the Apple iPhone 5 using once again the front facing camera, which is also 720p. And now we're going to use the Apple iPad 3rd generation, not the 4th generation front-facing camera. Now the 3rd generation is not 720p. I believe it's 480p. It's standard definition. I don't know the exact resolution off the top of my head, but I know for a fact that the 4th generation does boost the camera up to that 720p. So this is a standard definition, whereas the other two here, the iPhone and the Surface, are in fact high definition. So this is just to give you guys sort of an idea of the different resolutions and how each one looks. Right off this like the screens here, I don't know how it's going to look in Final Cut yet, but right on the screen here, I have to say that even though the Surface is 720 and the iPad is standard definition, they look very close. The colors on the Surface look a little bit darker, and the colors on the iPad look a little bit brighter. I'm not sure if that's with like the aperture with the camera, or whether it's being affected by that light over there. This is really as close as I can get the cameras all together. They are within a couple inches of each other, just a different angle, and I do realize that could affect the lighting, but overall this should give you a pretty decent idea of the lighting situations. And I do have a couple lights on. I have some lights shining down, also a lamp this way, and like I said, that light back that way. And so I am wearing this hat. I'll go ahead and take this off, and I'll go ahead and hold it up to the Surface, give you an idea of how it focuses. And on the Surface, there is no like tap to focus. So as soon as you tap the screen, it just stops recording. So there's no like manual tap to focus on that. So I'll go ahead and hold up the beanie on the Surface, see how it looks, and we'll get a little bit closer on the iPhone 5. And just to keep it fair, I'm not going to tap any of these Apple devices to focus. We're just going to see how it handles them. So then here it is on the iPad. Once again, the iPhone. And now the Surface. Alright, so hopefully that gives you, a relatively good idea. My hair is crazy bad, so I'm going to put my beanie back on, and onwards with the video. Getting into the software side of things, the Surface has two different interfaces, modern and a traditional desktop. I'd like to start off by saying that the modern user interface is very fast and functional. Whether you want to go into the App Store or you want to browse the web, the modern user interface seems to put up a very good experience and is right on par with pretty much any other tablet out there. When using the modern interface, I noticed no stutter or lag or any dropped frames of any kind. There's even some cool pinch and zoom features that I really like that the iPad even doesn't have. Despite the fact that there's not too many applications in the App Store at the moment, which I suspect will change, the Metro user interface makes it very easy to find all the applications that you have downloaded from the store. Really, it works the way you'd think. And as you probably could have guessed, it's just as easy to launch the application that you downloaded from the store. Now, despite the modern user interface being a surprisingly good experience, the desktop is where the Surface RT runs into problems. The desktop is literally a desktop, just like a regular PC. On the Surface, no pun intended, this may not seem so bad, except for the fact that this desktop cannot run Windows apps. In fact, the only applications that the desktop mode can run, besides Windows Explorer of course, would be Microsoft Office 2013 and Internet Explorer. Now don't get me wrong, these applications work pretty good for what they are, but there's really no need to have them within a desktop environment. When doing something like launching an audio file, I'm actually taken away from the desktop and I'm instead directed to an entirely different application, which by the way looks like it was launched from the modern user interface. And yeah, it takes this long to load. It's also worth mentioning that while the performance of the desktop isn't poor, there's definitely a lot of room for improvement. As you can see here, when I resize the window, it really has to redraw itself, and that does not look nice. While that modern user interface is nice and buttery smooth, there are performance hits in other places than just the desktop. There are a few applications that simply do not perform the way that they should. So as you can see right now, I'm going to go ahead and give you an example of this. Right now, I'm just making sure there's no applications running on the Surface, and on the iPad over here, there's also no applications running. I'm going to go ahead and open Cut the Rope. This is an application, well really a game, that was downloaded right from the store on each device. So as you can see here, it's already loaded on the Surface, and you must be thinking to yourself by now, wow, that thing's really fast. Look at that iPad keep going. What a noob. Well, in reality, let's go ahead and see the differences. So we'll go ahead and we'll hit play, and this is one thing that I really want you guys to see. Look at the frame rates on the Surface, and now look at them on the iPad. The iPad's like a full 60 frames a second, and the Surface, well, it's lucky to be getting around 10. As you can see, on the iPad, it's just buttery smooth, whereas on the Surface, there's definitely some performance hits. And so now we'll just go ahead and load a level, skip that little intro on the iPad. And even on the first level here, when I cut that rope, you can see that candy drops just a little bit slower on the Surface. Now if it came down to an application taking maybe a few seconds longer to load, then that wouldn't be that big of a deal. But with games like Cut the Rope, every fraction of a second can make a difference on whether you win or lose the game. Now this is all the fault of software optimization and not necessarily Microsoft's fault, but it is something to keep in mind. Here we have browser mark on the iPad. As you can see, it says it's superior to 81% of tablet browsers, whereas on the Surface, Microsoft's Internet Explorer is actually recognized as a PC desktop, which is why 2106 seems pretty low. So now what are my final thoughts on the Microsoft Surface with RT? In a nutshell, it seems that Microsoft just isn't sure what they want this device to be. Not being able to run native Windows applications is a big downfall. The Surface without the keyboard doesn't make sense for a full laptop replacement, but at the same time the USB port and the tall screen don't necessarily make it a full-on tablet either. The kickstand can only be used one way, so there's no way to prop up the device for a good typing angle. Without the ability to run native Windows applications, the desktop interface is pointless and will only confuse first-time tablet buyers that were expecting more. Let's not forget the fact that on a 32GB Surface, 16GB was available to me when I got it, and after installing only 2 or 3 applications, I'm down to 14. The battery life simply did not surprise me in a good or bad way. I found it to be average, a little bit less than my iPad, but right on par with the other tablets out there. At the end of the day, I simply cannot recommend the Microsoft Surface with RT. Having 2 separate interfaces is one thing, but having 2 interfaces and having one of them be pointless is a whole different story. Now with that said, the hardware itself feels great, the tablet fits in my hands very nicely, the modern user interface is something fresh, it's something that is buttery smooth, but with all things considered about this tablet, I simply would not spend $500 on it, and that's without the keyboard that Microsoft really wants you to have. By the time the Surface Pro comes around, the App Store will more than likely have a lot more applications to choose from, and those applications will be a lot more optimized for the platform. There you have it guys, those are my thoughts on the Microsoft Surface with RT. Be sure to let me know what you think in the comments down below, and be sure to give this video a nice big ol' thumbs up, I'd really appreciate it. I'm at CPUKid on Twitter, also be sure to check out RocheTechnology.com and at RocheTechnology on Twitter, and I hope to see you guys in my next video.